Welcome to The Founder's Mind. This is your host, Adam Muchler. On this episode, I have Remy Meraz, the founder and CEO of Tyme, spelled M-E-T-Y-M-E. Remy shares about her entrepreneurial journey, what she's cooking up with Tyme, and why she's all in on creating resources to reduce stress and anxiety in life. Stay tuned throughout the episode to learn some of the incredible insights Remy has picked up along the way. Welcome to The Founder's Mind. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I love that you're doing this. I see you've been cranking out interviews and good stuff.
Yes, it is. It's basically my own little startup. I mean, I have my coaching business and what I get paid to do, but I'm learning a lot about, and I think we talked about this in our initial conversation, creating something seemingly out of nothing. It takes a lot of energy.
It sure does.
Well, where I always like to start is hearing from you and your words a little bit about who you are, what you're up to, and what you're building.
Sure. Who am I? Remy Meraz.
The non-existential answer.
Yeah. I'm just a girl who decided to go for it. That's who I am.
I love it.
Yeah. I've done the corporate thing 20 plus years. Startups to small business to Fortune 500. And I had some ideas throughout my life that I didn't have the confidence or the courage or to go and try to make happen. And when I came up with this idea, I said, prior to coming up with the idea, I said, the next time I have a great idea, I'm going to go for it and I'm not going to quit. And then this idea came and here we are. And so Tyme Network, we are building a web and mobile platform that's designed to reduce emotional stress, both in the workplace and in one's personal life. And we're doing that through mixed media, utilizing video, augmented reality, and some artificial intelligence. And it's exciting, to know that we can make a difference in people's lives. And just, we're early stage, but from what we've done so far and what we've tested, it's already had impact, on people. And to know that we help people. I mean, ultimately for me, that's what it is. It's just wanting to help people be better people.
That's awesome. There's not a lot of stress in the world these days. So
not at all.
No. How did you get into this? I mean, I think my comment was a little flippant, right? We're all working through something or something, like many things.
Yep.
But how did you get into this specific, building this platform to address definitely this growing level of stress?
So it came from both personal and professional experiences. So on the personal side, I grew up in a very multicultural family where there tends to be a lot of stigma around getting help or even talking about problems, right? It was just something that didn't get talked about. And there was a lot of pretending that things were okay. And that happens with a lot of people. And we had tragedy strike our family, and it forced everybody to get help at one point or another. And it changed our family, not only each individual person, but family dynamics. And we broke through generational cycles of behavior. So I know firsthand what that's like, as many people in my family. So that was on the personal side. On the professional side, I, like I said, worked in small business and startups all the way to Fortune 500 companies. And every leader I ever had and every friend that I know that's owned a business, when I've asked them what their number one problem is, their biggest headache, they said people. They said people bring their problems to work, and we know they take their problems home. We're spending more time managing people and their problems than the business.
Yeah.
And when I started doing the research, I saw 95% of employers offer employee assistance programs. Mm-hmm. Less than 3% of employees actually use them. So there's this huge disconnect, right? There's resources available and people just aren't taking advantage. And there were 3 reasons. There was stigma, lack of resources, and poor communication from employer to employee. But we also know that employees aren't necessarily being honest either, right? Nobody wants to say what's really happening. They're afraid they're going to get laid off, or it's going to be held against them, or they can't handle it. And so, just doing the research and kind of, putting everything together. And the big data point is that in the next decade, $16 trillion impact to businesses globally in lost productivity costs due to stress and mental health.
16 trillion with a T.
T. Trillion.
Yeah, just like to emphasize that.
Yeah, that's crazy. And so we wanted to create something that would be non-intrusive in people's lives, that would be really helpful and impactful. And, you're a coach. I've been fortunate enough and blessed enough, having been in sales and business development, my whole career, that I've had access to coaching and training and, peak performance training and personal and professional development courses and workshops and coaching. And most people can't afford it.
Yeah.
Right?
It's an expensive business.
It's an expensive business. And so, or it's given to management or salespeople, but it doesn't trickle down to the masses. So for me was, how can we make coaching and therapy and all the learning that goes on with that and the breakthroughs that come with that, because that's really where the change is created, is by helping people have breakthroughs.
Yeah.
We make that available to everybody. And this is what we're doing.
What would you say? So I find this fascinating, and I would say it's safe to say that I'm pretty biased at, being a coach, doing executive leadership development, and understanding not only the value, but also prioritizing, working on yourself and working on how you work with others. What was that? What was that moment? I mean, it didn't always exist, right? Tyme wasn't always around. What was that inflection point where you started putting in the work and developing this idea and product and service? And I know there's a website, and I know that it's starting to get out there. Where is it right now?
So where we're at now is we have an MVP that we're testing with companies and with their workforce. We already had produced a library of content that we tested and validated already with end users. So we did that prior to developing anything, just following the lean startup methodology. And so now we're actually onboarding companies for private testing. And so we're about to do that quantum leap piece. Okay, and now we test, and now we convert you to customers.
Yeah.
and crossing that chasm. So it's exciting, and it's been quite the journey and learning process. I'm a first-time founder. And so I tell people all the time, I feel like I'm getting an MBA. And so, you have to wear a lot of hats. And, I'm a non-technical founder as well. So I just have the idea and really understanding what I want the end user to experience. But there's been a whole lot of learning curve, in getting a technical product up and running. Obviously, I had to enlist a team, put a team together, and soar with my strengths and all that other stuff I don't know how to do. Like, let me go find the smartest people out there to do it.
Yeah, how'd you go through that process? I think that's a really great point, and it's come up a couple times on the show. But it's always great to hear different approaches. So, as a non-technical founder, creating a business, an idea that inherently requires technology and relies on technology. What were some of the steps that you took to, bring people in, to create that team, and get it out there?
Yeah. So what I did was, first and foremost, for us, it's the content piece, right? I mean, that's what the users were going to experience in the end. So first, I focused on that. So it was really production. And I've worked in entertainment before, but on the business side, so I didn't know the back end. So it was focusing on that part of the team and finding people who knew how to produce and content and all of that. And the second part was the technology piece. Once we validated that people liked the content and it worked the way we designed it, because it's cognitively designed, then, and also I had to go enlist a network of experts to be a part of this too.
Yeah.
It was a lot. It wasn't, where a lot of other folks where they're building apps or platforms and it's just the technology. We have some other pieces that had to get put into play first before we even got to the technology piece.
Mm-hmm.
And, this whole journey, it's almost like once I got clear that I wanted to do it and I declared it into the world, it really is amazing how this happens, right? And we know the 7 habits of highly successful people, right? You speak it, you write it, draw it, whatever it has to be. But literally, I was at a friend's house. It was like a high school friends gathering. Someone was in town, and I was speaking to my friend's husband, and I was telling him what I'm doing, and I need to find somebody. And he said, "Here's my card. I want you to call me tomorrow." And it turned out he was an ex-Google guy, developer, architect, can build anything, right? And was working at the time for NBC Universal, building out all of their show apps.
So kind of relevant.
Oh my God, like ching, right? So Simon came on board as like our head of engineering CTO, and he's leading that charge of it. And so it's really just, again, it's about getting clear on what you're great at
mm-hmm.
and what you suck at, and not be embarrassed about it, right? And just owning it and saying, all those things I'm not great at, I'm going to go find, people to help me with that piece. And it really is about, when you're bootstrapping it all and getting people to come on board, it's about the vision and the passion for it, conveying that passion and finding people that believe in what you're building as well. And so everybody on my team believes in the work. They've all done it before. They've seen the results in their own life. And so that was a big piece to get everybody to come on board, in the sweat equity role of needing you to help put in some work, in the beginning, and roll up your sleeves and willing to be a part of it. But it's because they believe in the end result and what it's going to do.
I think it's such a great, you brought up several really great, I don't want to say points, but that's kind of what they were. You really raised some really great points. And that was, one of them was just talking about what you're envisioning and what you are trying to accomplish and where you need support, unknowingly to Simon, speaking to someone who might literally have been the most perfect person to talk to about it,
Mm-hmm.
but being open to sharing your idea. There's something in the startup space and anyone who has an idea where there's a little bit of paranoia that comes up, right? Like, well, I don't want to, what if someone takes it? I don't want to talk about it. What if someone steals it? And I think you miss a lot of actual, like the bigger upside,
mm-hmm.
right? If you don't share,
right?
Like if you're too guarded, you miss that conversation with Simon.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I've had a dozen, if not more, situations like that.
Yeah.
With legal work, with, little different aspects of every part of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And I call them like guardian angels, falling out of the sky to help. Hey, I can do, that's my background. I can help you with that piece. And they want to do it because they see the passion and the energy and the hard work that you're putting in, and they just want to help you get to that next milestone,
Yeah. I think that's such a, there's just a lot of power in being open, which, there's a level of vulnerability, obviously,
right,
when you're putting yourself out there and your idea out there.
Got to practice what you preach, though.
You got to practice what you preach. Yeah. And there's a lot of power in vulnerability.
Yes.
And this is not an original thought, but, just listening to you talk about this and seeing what that outcome is, that very generative, power of conversation. And you said 7 habits of highly successful people, think it, write it, say it, getting something out there and creating something out of thin air.
Yeah. Shares with everybody, and there's another book, and I'm totally blanking on the name of it, but there's another book that is on the premise that it's like the 2 degrees of separation, that everybody within your entire network, there's like 2 degrees of separation of someone who can help you get to that next point.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you literally, you won't know unless you have those conversations.
Right.
Like I find myself out and about, meeting people all the time for my work and just to learn about what other people are doing. And I always say, this is the mantra that I heard from other coaches and from other people. But relationships precede results. And I always tell people that,
Yeah.
I don't know you well enough to sell you something. I'd love to know what you're doing and what you care about and what's working and not working. And maybe as we get to know each other, we both find that there are ways for us to work together, but we'll never know unless we're open enough to have that conversation.
Yeah. And it requires, I think startup life, entrepreneurship, is a lot of vulnerability. It's a lot of putting yourself out there, and especially if when you're bootstrapping it and resources are limited, you have to be resourceful. You
Mm-hmm.
have to open up your mouth and ask, ask for assistance or, hey, can I get some advice? I definitely don't know everything. And for me, this whole process has been learn as fast as you can.
Learn as fast as you can.
Learn as much as possible and as fast as you can.
Yeah. I think it's a great place to sort of dig into it. What's a challenge that you have faced? And I'm sure there's been many, but one that comes to mind, and how did you navigate it in this specific journey?
I think the biggest challenge has really been just getting out of my own way. Some perfectionist syndrome, right? And wanting everything to be perfect. And, I believe in, and it's one of our core values within, the company about to be in excellence and do everything in excellence. And sometimes it has to be just good enough.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's been that, and one of the biggest challenge is overcoming that piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's where that vulnerability piece comes into, because it requires you to, here's what it is. This is what we have. This is where we're going. But just to keep showing progress, right?
Yeah.
And you can wait forever for something to be perfect, and it might not ever be perfect. But it's just about, okay, how can we get out there, test it, get feedback, and then keep it moving, reiterate, And so it's really been getting out of my own way, and how I've overcome it. And really, I would say in the last maybe 5 months that this has really happened.
Mm-hmm.
I have instilled some daily practices now in my life on the work-life balance piece, because what I found was that I'm overthinking things and stressing out about things, unnecessarily. And so implementing some daily practices and habits and staying really focused on what the core pieces of, the business that have to get done. Right. So implementing a 90-day game plan and working it in like sprints, in 30-day
Mm-hmm.
sprints, and coupling that with the daily practices of the self-care has been really instrumental. And so now what I have found is I'm staying out of the stress and fear part,
Mm-hmm.
which part of the perfectionist thing, because it's like, oh, it has to be perfect or else people aren't going to like it. They're not going to like me. They're going to think this, they're going to think that, right? Letting all that go and just really staying focused on, okay, this is about the milestones that we've implemented for the each 30-day sprint, and then doing those daily care. And I'm just so focused now and really clear, and honestly, not stressed at all. I feel very, very peaceful about everything. And just, it's like the vision and staying focused on the big end picture, because you can get caught up in the weeds every day.
Oh yeah. Well,
Right.
I think it's amazing. One, that sort of, you're like it sounds like you're in the zone, but and I mean that honestly, like the general, we are really, really good at getting in our own way.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're really good at it. And it's something that, to your point, we can also work on. Like you worked on it and you've created practices and you've worked on getting out of your own way.
Mm-hmm.
That's completely internal and it's completely self-maintained, right? You don't have to go somewhere else. You don't have to rely on someone else. Like, what are the things that I or you can do to get out of our own way, and what does that unleash in us?
Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting to hear what. So you've been doing this for. It sounds like you've been all in for about half a year. Is that correct?
2 years.
2 years. Oh, okay. You said something about 5 months earlier tonight.
Oh, I said I've been doing like the where I got out of my own way.
Okay.
Doing the work on getting out of my own way.
Perfect. So
working with a couple coaches, actually.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you've been all in for 2 years, which is incredible, by the way. I think a lot of businesses, the first year is the first litmus test and like shockwave of does it continue?
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're on a high-speed train to the 3-year mark, which is another litmus test. What's some advice or a piece of advice that you've received along the way that you have found to be really impactful?
So many pieces to it. Actually, one of my mentors said this to me because I had a moment where, when I say I didn't want to quit per se, but it was like go back to work full time, right? Like, and and not be in it, all in. And she said to me, "Honey, I hate to break it to you." She said, "But you're giving birth to a startup, and it's in the birth canal right now. In fact, it's crowning." And I've had a child before, so when she said that, I realized like, oh, like ding, 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 right? It's a process.
Yeah.
And like childbirth takes hours. This could months, years, right?
Yeah.
And it's painful.
Yeah.
Right? But you got to stay in it and focus, right? On pushing this thing out. And it just really helped me put it into perspective, right? That it is going to be a painful experience, and it's just but you're going to get through it,
Yeah, I mean, it's like running. Obviously, I will never know the physical experience of giving birth, but I'm definitely actually learning about it a lot. As my partner and I are preparing for our first kid.
Yeah.
And another analogy that comes to mind is when you run a long race. If you run, a 5K, 10K, half marathon, it doesn't get easier every mile that goes on. Like you're the freshest in the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. And then, it gets harder and it gets more challenging, and your brain starts to get involved. It starts to give you signals to quit. And maybe you're really in the zone, and maybe you get, a runner's high or whatever. But the reality is it is harder on your body as you progress. Right. But there's that end result, or there's maybe in business, there's a plateau and then there's the next challenge, but there's this element of that's part of reaching the mountaintop or achieving a goal is, navigating those natural challenges and those unexpected challenges and saying, this is bigger than stopping. This is bigger than quitting. And that's why there aren't, millions of Zuckerbergs, right? Because they navigated those challenges at the different stages of the company, right?
Right.
And there was a bigger vision.
Yeah. And I would, even say for me, that was probably another big challenge for me because by nature, I'm a sprinter. So I go at 100 miles an hour and I like to go fast. And I've always liked accelerator programs, because I can get through them faster. And that was one big fat learning lesson, when, you've heard that many times over, in entrepreneurship, it's a marathon, not a sprint journey. And so that took a minute for that really to sink in, because by nature, just the way I'm wired, I like to go fast and things are always going fast. But I will tell you what I've noticed, that when the things that haven't worked out, or the things that didn't go as fast as I wanted to, once I got to the other side, clearly I see why that didn't work out.
Mm.
Like there's been setbacks, and our first year was actually pretty great. The second year was tough. We had setback. I won a contest. We were supposed to get some contest 50,000, which was our development cost. That didn't happen, and that set us back about 9 months. And so we had to figure out a workaround solution around that, and that was tough. That was really tough. But I'll tell you, those days that were really dark, and where I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how we're going to get through this. I don't know if we can pull this off. I kid you not, there was somebody, that would reach out and say, it was they were like the end users, right? Like, hey, I watched this video and it helped me get through this.
Yeah.
Hey, I saw this and I thought of you and I think it will help, like, again, those little guardian angel moments in the darkest days and always came through to like keep me going. In the reminder, don't quit, Remy, don't quit.
Yeah. Whether it's a nudge from users or your community or a mentor or a coach or an advisor, whoever,
Right.
keeping your eyes and ears open for those nudges,
Yeah.
and the reminders, like you said.
Yeah. And again, it takes a certain amount of openness, to be, to see them, to hear them, to receive them,
For sure.
because a lot of times, ego may want to get in the way and not accept
Yeah. Ego will,
kindness or help.
ego has derailed many a career and company.
Yes. 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 No ego.
Who's a founder that you admire and why?
So Steve Jobs was one, just
Mm-hmm.
because he was such a visionary.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you think about Apple and, iPhones and just how they created like this whole new culture. I mean,
Yeah.
like just transformational, right? A product, but just him as a visionary. I mean, of course, Jeff Bezos, when Amazon, when you think about how they started off and where they're at now producing movies, streaming, and we're kind of playing in that space a little bit. And so, when I look at founders who are really visionaries and just took something and to see where, something where it started here, even Netflix, Netflix was a DVD order company, and now like look at what it is, and where they literally disrupted Hollywood,
Oh
film,
yeah.
television. People don't watch television the same way.
Yeah.
Don't watch movies the same way anymore. So it's really people who are really just disruptors and visionaries. But we've heard all the stories about Steve Jobs in the beginning, and personality wise, and what a tough person he was, and maybe he could have used some me time, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was thinking before you said it, but I agree.
Back then. But in the end, when with what he went through and maybe reevaluating his life, and I mean, he had some remarkable words, parting words, where I think that we can take a lot of that and implement it now, while we're living and going through the tough stuff.
Oh
but,
yeah.
but for me, it's those folks that the big names that really have been, I identify with the visionary part. And what, for me, it's really about helping people, like I said, be better people, but especially in those moments when, and I've had plenty of them, and that's part of why it's here, is that where you wish you could have just reacted differently.
Yeah.
You could have handled the situation differently, and like, I want to be that for people. And if we can transform lives, we had, we had a woman who was one of our user case studies, who said, not only did I watch the videos, but I started having my 15-year-old daughter watch them.
Mm.
And I implemented some of them in my presentations at work for my team. And for me, that was a trifecta, because it was a generational piece
Yep.
where, wow, she's going to parent differently. And maybe we're
Mhm.
going to help her daughter grow up differently. Right.
Mhm.
And then her colleagues at work. Right. And so what I envision is Me Time being that disruptor and helping, transform lives. They transformed an industry and individual lives like that too. And I'm hoping we can do the same thing. That's what I see.
So no shortage of big and lofty goals.
Think big, go big.
Excellent. I love it. And I think we'll call it at that. It would be great to hear kind of final comment. What's a great way for listeners who feel really connected to what you're talking about and want to learn more from you or about your business? What are great ways for them to follow along in your work, engage with you? Where should we point them?
Yeah, so at Remy Meraz on social media, I actually share my startup journey on Instagram and Facebook. There's a lot of challenges, especially for female founders and
Mm-hmm.
female women of color founders. And so I said I was going to share it, the good, bad, and ugly,
Yeah.
and for me, it's about sharing so that if I can save anybody tears, time, energy, or money,
Mm-hmm.
from my learning lessons and me just being vulnerable and putting it out there to help others. I mean, that's what I'm about. So yeah, at Remy Meraz on social media, and it's at Me Time Network, time with a Y. And
Cool.
love to hear from folks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Remy, and I'm excited to put this together and get it out there so people can hear.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate what you're doing, and you're really helping people. You're sharing everybody's stories out there. Great work.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Founder's Mind. Be sure to check back next week for episode 26, the halfway mark of The Founder's Mind's first year. Next week, Dale Pfeiffer, founder and CEO of Good World, joins me on the show and shares about her experience building a platform to create good in the world through donations, one hashtag at a time. To make sure you don't miss any awesome wisdom from guests and stay up to date on the most recent episodes of the show, be sure to visit thefoundersmind.com. You can also follow along on social at The Founder's Mind. Last but not least, thank you to Roy Matz for the music on the show and his dope editing skills that make The Founder's Mind possible. Until next time, take care.
Going through all of this insanity and try to bring new ideas, make them a reality. Illuminate in the thoughts, make it a priority to implement what you learn. What you get is what you be. In a world full of noise, hard to find that clarity to try to lead subtly, never full of vanity, and try to change something small or try to change humanity. Power forward through the dark, founder's mind is what you see. Founder's mind is what you see.